In a fitting conclusion to a series that had to have been uber frustrating for the Penguins themselves. I know it's been frustrating for all of you out there. Hey, myself included. This is Pittsburgh postgame as the Penguins lose Game 6 at Nassau Coliseum. Thankfully, their final game there ever. But neither here nor there. Islanders 5, Penguins 3. The Penguins, in a series in which they had 11 separate leads, they end up blowing 9 of them. They had 3 separate leads in this game. Greg Revak, who is my guest on the show tonight, and couldn't hold a single one of them. Not putting it all on Tristan Jarry before all the accusations come at me. Oh, you're just blaming the goalie because it's easy and you don't understand hockey and blah, 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 blah. No, I feel like if you watch the series, and I was actually defending Jarry, I think after Game 3, I felt like he was starting to find himself, find his equilibrium. Well, Game 4, not on him, terrible team performance, but Game 5, he essentially gives the game away and gets seriously outdueled by Ilya Sorokin. And then today, a couple more soft ones in a game in which you can't afford even one soft one. So there you go. I hate to simplify it that much. Greg, who comes to us via Hockey's Arsenal, which he started himself, also the University of Akron and the coach's site. You and I discussed goaltending a couple of times on this show during the regular season. You were pretty high on Casey DeSmith, and it's just a shame that he wasn't available for this series, wasn't it?
Absolute disappointment. Great goalie. Would do better than Jarry. I mean, Jarry's been relatively solid. I don't really like how much he keeps his edges. I feel like he's always on his feet, and it gives him problems anytime anything gets thrown down there. I think the Smith's a little more solid, especially low. But I just felt like the Penguins were really good the entire season. Obviously made a great pickup with Jeff Carter. Fortunately, he's coming back next year. Yeah. But yeah, just what a disappointment with the goaltending. I hate to jump on a goalie, but a lot of those ones are ones that everyone wants back, including him. So where to even start?
Yeah, well, let's stick with the obvious, right? You mentioned something there about Jarry and how he stays on his feet. Could you elaborate more on that? What you critique about his game, and maybe what you saw in this series overall that allowed him to become a much leakier goalie than we saw late in the regular season?
Yeah. So if you the big difference between Sorokin and Jarry is how they keep their feet. So how often do you move on your feet? How long do you stay on your feet is a big question for goalies, because most of the goals are going to happen low. And you want to stay on your feet because it allows you to move laterally better. So now you can track pucks. But when you get into the playoffs and you're getting all this junk thrown at you, staying on your feet can sometimes be your own worst enemy, because pucks are going to go loose. Your timings would be slightly off. It's almost like the different kinds of shots between the regular season and the playoffs are a big problem for him, because he's so patient. He really waits for it, that he wasn't down in time. And when he was down, it seemed like he was fishing. I mean, Sorokin was solid in net, hitting his spots. I mean, there were a few times I remember in the game today where he was sliding to his spots, but at least he was hitting his edges and was able to get down, and he just shut down the lower part of the net. Everything kind of needed to be high. The only time he got caught was on the rush with that first goal from Carter.
I was really impressed by Sorokin's lower body movement, and he's not necessarily a dynamic mover, but I felt like he was more often than not, much more often than not, in the right position, like you mentioned, going down at the right times and sealing off everything. So, again, you got to talk about Mitch Korn, the New York Islanders goaltending coach. He's followed Barry Trotz around throughout his NHL career. You've got to know him a little bit too. So there's something real there, isn't it? It's no longer a coincidence after, 15 years of him making goalies better?
Not at all. I think there was one time in the All-Star game where he had 3 separate goalies at the All-Star game, and he's got a photo in his basement of it. Really proud. It's just amazing what he's done and the work he's done. Started with Dominik Hasek back in Buffalo, and then, he's been following Barry Trotz around. So Rene, Fukun, Chris Mason, then Varlamov this year, Sorokin and Holtby. I mean, these are all solid tenders. And even you think about Holtby, how much he struggled ever since he got away from Mitch Korn. It's just amazing what he's done as a goalie coach. There's no way he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame with his track record. How many of his guys have been Vezinas? And no matter where he goes, they just play well. It's unbelievable. Even with the Barry Trotz system, which is great and makes it easier on goalies, he just turns it up. He has a great quote that I absolutely love. Quarters is a game of shots. Basketball is a game of shots. Hockey's a game of situations, and you got to figure out how to play each one. It's not so much a game of shots.
Yeah, it's not always about the raw talent, isn't it? It's about how you read it and how you adapt to it, and how you learn as you move along. And I'm not saying that Jarry's career in Pittsburgh is done, but it's no longer his net, as I just put it on Twitter. It was his net coming into the season. It sure was. And I guess from the start of the year, Greg, it just felt like he never quite got to that level that he reached the previous season. And it's been a while now since he was that all-star caliber goalie. He was pretty much average this season when you total it all up, bad at the start, and then picked it up as the Penguins picked their game up. And you just need to save once in a while. Talk about situations. To give up one for a 5-3 Islanders lead, that's a lot different from 4-3. And, well, we don't even have to go back to the end of Game 5. That one is pretty easy to think about. But I think about that second goal in Game 5 even. If you recall, Jarry comes way out wildly. Coach Conrad Wade of Duquesne Hockey brought this to my attention. He thought that second goal was just as bad as the third one. That allowed Eberle to gather the puck and basically dump it into an empty net there, too. So it's not just the obvious moments. It's also little plays that it looked like a guy who was trying to figure it out. And I'm not saying he can't figure it out. Marc-Andre Fleury wasn't outstanding in his first playoff performance against the Senators, if you recall, 14 years ago. And he followed up with a great run to help carry the Penguins to the Stanley Cup final. It's tough to compare one guy to another, but at the same time, I don't want to quit on him just yet. That's the problem. And the problem also for the Penguins is that they just signed him to a 3-year extension, too.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not a bad goalie. I mean, if you look at his track record, he's been great everywhere he's been. For me, and you just said with that Eberle goal, like, he almost wants it too bad. He's not being patient enough in the net. He's trying to be extra aggressive. He's trying to make those great saves and almost trying to do too much. I feel like, an offseason will be good for him to kind of regroup, get his head straight, because he just wanted it too much. I mean, from what I'm seeing, and being overly aggressive. You want to let pucks hit you. You want to be patient. The best goalies are the ones you barely notice moving. I think UC Saros in Nashville is a great example. I think he's 5'11" in the program, but there's no way he's over 5'10". Not a chance.
Yeah.
And everything seems to hit him in the chest. And you're wondering, okay, how does that happen? And, he's patient. He knows his routes. He's deep in the net, and then he comes out and takes away the angle. Jarry's got the talent. It's a matter of putting it together. It's all mental. When you get to those goalies, I mean, the top five are the top five. Your Marc-Andres, Vasilevsky, Hellebecks, Carey Prices of the world. They might be in a small stratosphere by themselves, but everyone else is like, what was it, 5 through 60? It's all mental. It's all mental and how your mindset is in that year. And I feel like Jarry just got it all wrong in the playoffs. Almost like he was trying too hard, wanted it too much. And in goaltending, the harder you try, sometimes the worse it gets.
And it's just crazy, though, because you saw Matt Murray perform so well in his first 2 postseason runs. And then he went downhill from there. So there's no guarantee in goaltending, especially. It's such a difficult position to project. I think part of it is the nature of the position. You can only stop the shots you face. It's a passive position. You can't go out there and dictate it and grab it by the horns. You just have to adapt to what's going on in front of you. If there's 10 shots, you have to be ready for a low event game. If there's 40, you have to be ready for that. So I think that's part of what makes it difficult to project. As a coach, Greg, do you find that as well at whatever level you're coaching at, whether it be college or even lower than that? Is goaltending always difficult to figure out?
Absolutely. And the little tweaks make the big differences. So something you don't even think about could be the problem. And that's why guys like Mitch Korn get paid. He's probably making $1 million. They don't, give you goalie coaches salaries out there, but I bet he's making $1 million in Long Island just to make those little tweaks, those little differences. Like, you barely notice them, but make a world of difference. Because like you said, you may face 10 shots, you may face 40, but you got to make them all. There's no excuse. So it's almost voodoo out there with the goalies. I mean, that's why you'll see goalies rarely going in the first round these days, because you just don't know how it's going to play out. The development is so weird. And you've seen guys take a long time, like Tim Thomas, who even played over in Europe, came back and was a Vezina winning goalie. And then you've had guys that get to the league early and crash out. Who's the guy who got traded for Tuukka Rask?
Oh, gee.
It's like Andrew Rayford or something
Raycroft?
like that. Raycroft. Yeah, Raycroft. Yeah, just fizzled out. Boom. Like, goaltending is such a weird spot. You just don't know from year to year. So Jarry could come back. I mean, he's got a base of talent. We've all seen it. He could come back, great mindset, and just shoot the lights out. You just don't know with these guys.
Extremely difficult, and it's also hard to analyze too without having a deep knowledge of the position. So put someone like me in a tough spot, because I definitely relate more to the skaters than the goaltenders. And so we can talk skaters, and we do have some comments rolling in, plenty of comments, as you would imagine, as the season is over. Time to hit the links if you're the Penguins. Hey, if I'd have told you they lasted until Memorial Day weekend, you'd have been pretty happy. Well, I guess not this season. Most seasons, that's the middle of the third round, or maybe even the start of the Stanley Cup final a couple of years when they played the Red Wings. I want to say that series started, that first one, on Memorial Day weekend, but I digress. Aaron has an interesting comment saying that's probably the last time we'll see 87, 71, and 58 on the ice together. Big changes coming for good reason. I completely disagree, Aaron. I don't see, for me, I was highly encouraged by how Malkin even came back in this series, when I'm sure he wasn't 100%, but you can still see the spark there, and you can still see the playmaking ability. Whoever you trade Malkin for at this point isn't going to be as good as Malkin. I don't care if you get 2 or 3 guys, and you're not going to get that level of a return for a Malkin or a Letang. So I wavered earlier in the year, Greg, but I'm on the I'm going to stick to this one here. I feel like I saw enough from all 3 of those guys, Sid especially, but Malkin and Letang too. Maybe Letang was the best skater for the Penguins this series. I think there's enough there to say, all right, we're just going to roll with this until the wheels fall off, and then we'll pick up the pieces. I don't think it's time for some sort of a mini rebuild or a restructure on the fly with, say, Crosby at the centerpiece. So how do you feel about that situation? I wouldn't change much of anything. I thought this team got it rolling well, and I think there was just the one culprit, goaltending, in this series.
Absolutely, and there's no way that all 3 don't come back. There's this owner called Mario Lemieux, who's been there, done that, and he's seen his team get broken up, and he'll never let that happen. Sid would never sign up on either of those guys leaving, and he knows that Lemieux's got his back. So I'm with you. I think there's a solid core here. Probably Colton Sceviour is going to be gone. Curious to see what happens with Zach Aston Reese. But if you go to capfriendly.com and you can look up their payroll, most of these guys are going to be coming back. They're already signed for next year. Jeff Carter's got his contract for 2021, 2022. This is a really solid team. It could be like Tampa Bay, maybe add a piece here, add a piece there, maybe some veteran presence like they've done up in Toronto. But overall, most of this team's coming back. They're going to be good again. The only question again is going to be goaltending, and maybe next year we finally have a Tristan Jarry that actually shows up, or Casey DeSmith comes back and is healthy and tears it up, or Legacy comes back and able to take that next step. So, I mean, the big question is going to be goaltending, but the rest of the team is just solid. Those big 3 aren't going anywhere anytime soon. They'll basically be buried in the arena at this rate.
I love the acquisition of Jeff Carter. I wasn't in love with it at the time, but once I found out the Penguins weren't paying the entire salary, I was okay with it. And he'll be back next year. He still shows the wheels. I never thought of him as a very fast skater or a great skater, but he's maintained that level through his mid-30s. So it's been impressive. He can still shoot and finish, obviously. He was a real breath of fresh air in that department late in the season, too. Interesting question, though, just popped up about, hold on one second, I got to find it. Brian Landers, talking about the defense. The one part of it that did disturb me in this series is defending the rush. The Islanders didn't really score off any in-zone possession time. It was all counterattack stuff, and the Penguins got a little looser with turnovers and things like that, fueling that rush in the second half of this series. But overall, I don't think they did a terrible job with that. I don't think the forwards were terribly irresponsible. I didn't see too many bad pinches. Maybe a couple of times the forwards didn't do an awesome job of backtracking. We saw that a couple of times tonight, even from Sid. But at the same time, maybe there's an opportunity to move, say, a Marcus Pettersson for someone who can perhaps defend a rush a little bit better, maybe even get a little more mobile on the blue line. I'm not sure. I realize those guys aren't easy to come by, and you'd have to work some sorcery to pull off a trade like that. But there could be some room for some improvement on the blue line. Cody Ceci, no guarantee he comes back, right? Because that's a one-year contract too. So I think if you're talking about changes, Greg, I would probably lean toward defense. And, they could use a little bit of everything, I think, back there. Maybe a little bit more of a defensive presence, maybe a little bit more of an offensive presence, too. So it could be upgraded, is my point. I think at times in this series, they looked a little bit overwhelmed by those quick, nifty Islander forwards.
Well, I mean, realistically, they were the better team. So, where you're going to be making changes, it's going to be on the fringes. It's not like they've got a lot of cap room
to be clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely nitpicking. But I'm with you on this. It's where do you make the changes? How do you make the changes? I mean, Tampa, all they did was add Pat Maroon and Zach Bogosian. And that was pretty much the two acquisitions.
Blake Coleman, too. Yep, he was good as well.
Yeah, so they added those guys. But again, fringe guys that have cheap contracts. Not any of the big pieces. The big pieces are there. So if you're going to make moves, it's going to be on the fringes. The one wild card would be, Brian Burke is not afraid to make big changes. Lemieux won't let the big three slide, but everyone else is probably on the block at any time, every single time of the year. I was surprised he didn't make any big changes. So obviously he likes the roster. He's probably steaming because he hates losing as much as anyone. But realistically, this is a good quality team. Playing the right way. I mean, Sullivan is an excellent coach, and sometimes you just get the short end of the stick in the hockey world. It's been proven over and over again to be one of those sports that's most at luck. So luck plays a huge role here. And you get, like you said, a few rush chances a game, and they get finished compared to the other way it doesn't go. So it's rough, but how do you change a roster? How do you work with the cap? Realistically, the Pens have been keeping up in the rat race, I would say, with how the game's going. It's being more, like you said, with those defensemen that play offensively, are willing to join the rush, more mobile. They're keeping up with that. So it's a matter of, do you want to change the identity to more something like that? They've been playing a fast game. They've been getting young guys who are able to go in, get on the forecheck, let Crosby and Malkin read and dictate off of that. But realistically, the core of that is probably going to stay true. So maybe add a piece of here and there, try to open up some roster spots with some cap room. But I really like this team, honestly. It just sucks the way it ended and all the little things that added up to make it happen. But it's just rough.
It does. And some comments here about Tuukka Rask being a free agent. Wouldn't that be something? He's in his mid-30s, but I still like him. If they don't like him in Boston anymore, maybe that's their problem. Of course, they could be about ready to go on a long playoff run. So if Tuukka Rask raises the Stanley Cup, perhaps there's an appetite to bring him back in Boston, no doubt. Some thoughts from Walt Flanagan. I got to bring him up. He's always with us here on the shows. And he says he's out on Sullivan. He's a good coach, says Walt, and he deserves a better fate. But this was a 6-game symbol of his coaching. He had no answers. He didn't try to change things up. Did we hear that about Dan Bilesma too, Greg, back that he didn't make enough adjustments and it was always stick to your game, get to your game? Look, I don't coach hockey. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about when it comes to like making those in-game changes. I don't know what that's like. I don't know how easy it is. I don't know how difficult it is. And I don't know the relative merits of sticking with what got you there. I think a lot of times can outweigh making some sort of a change. I think in Pittsburgh we can romanticize the X's and O's changes because Scotty Bowman went to the trap late in that Washington Capitals series in 1992. So that's been glorified for good reason. It was a great move, but the game's a lot more tricky, I think, these days. It's not quite as black and white. And I think Sullivan gets his teams in positions to win. It might be more on the players than it is on the coach in this circumstance, to use one of Sully's favorite words. What I would like to tinker with it a little bit, though, Greg, I'd love to see, much like a past post-game guest, Ryan Wilson, he chimes on this, harps on this a lot. Let's play Malkin and Crosby a little bit more together, perhaps at the end of periods. We finally saw it the last 2 games of this series, so maybe there's a crack in the armor, and maybe he'll go to that more. I still like Sully a lot, though, and I don't think he's reached his expiration date. I think the last 2 regular seasons are a pretty good example of him getting a lot out of these teams and him not having lost it, quote unquote.
Yeah, if you look past Crosby and Malkin and Gensel, realistically, this is a really bottom rock roster. I mean, you say that about taking out the big piece out of a lot of teams, but I feel like the Penguins probably more than most don't have the depth. And that's probably one of the big reasons why Sully's done so well is he actually plays those guys right after TV timeouts. Who's the coach prior? Is it Johnston?
Mike Johnston, correct.
He would just roll the lines like it was nothing. Like he wouldn't double shift Crosby. Like, what are you doing? Sullivan understands that first and foremost. Second part is he always changes his message. It's the same fundamentals, the same habits each year, but he always finds a new way to deliver it. If you watch Inside the Room, it's always the same message projected a different way, new, refreshing. So his expiration date is going to be way longer than most coaches. He may never expire. He could be one of those guys. It's a tough business. It's results business. So you never know what's going to happen there. But realistically, he is a phenomenal coach. I would love to have him for the USA Olympics if we could. But he's making these little adjustments here and there. Just sometimes things don't go your way. I love Sullivan. I'm with you. Don't think he's hit that expiration date. He's still fresh. The players still work for him. Everyone's bought into the same system. It's rough. It's just killing me because played so well. Just one bounce, two bounce, and you're suddenly out of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. It's the toughest trophy to win in sports for a reason, and you can see with the Pens. Every time my dad chimes in, he's like, "Oh man, the Pens got a team this year." That's when I start perking up my ears. Like, all right, maybe we should pay some extra attention here. And the last two times he did it was when they won the Cup, and this was another year. So I'm really disappointed that they didn't go further. But Sullivan out is not the answer.
I just don't see – it's not easy to find better coaches than Mike Sullivan. I think the Mike Johnston experiment is a pretty good example of that, right? I'll get rid of Bilesma. He never changes anything. And to be fair, Dan Bilesma has not really stuck around with any organization since then. Didn't go well in Buffalo, but he had nobody in Buffalo. I guess he got a chance in Detroit as an assistant. He's not coming back. I've always been higher on Dan Bilesma than most people too. So maybe I'm just sympathetic toward the coaches. I wasn't a huge fan of Mike Johnston because he slowed down what the Penguins were doing. He went away from what they should be doing. Matt says, at least we're not Edmonton. Yes, the Penguins were not swept, and the Penguins do have 3 Stanley Cups over the past, 12 years. So there you have it. Mark Thomas brings up a good point. The expansion draft, yes, that is happening. The Seattle Kraken are coming into the league. So decisions on who to expose, who to protect, that could help make some decisions for the Penguins, much like we saw back in 2017 when, of course, it led to Murray staying and Fleury departing. And Walt counters back with the fact that general managers like to hire their own coaches. You have Brian Burke, you have Ron Hextall, more than a new general manager, a new president, a new position the Penguins even made for Brian Burke. But then again, Brian Burke is a USA hockey guy. I don't know if he has some allegiance to Mike Sullivan. I would think those two guys would get along, but I'm not quite sure. And the roster could very well be reshaped a bit this offseason, but I'm not seeing any big changes. And we've seen some folks on the comments talk about the fact that, Penguins fans should be upset. Yeah, we're upset too, but look, I'm trying not to burn down the ship here because they did a lot of great things this season. I realize, the playoffs, the last 3 years, it's been difficult. They should have gotten past the first round at least one time, whether it be last year in the preliminary round or these 2 times against the Islanders. Maybe you excuse 2018-19, but I feel like they positioned themselves pretty well going forward. I'm not ready to blow it up, and I'm not ready to fire Mike Sullivan. I think you look at a team like the Washington Capitals, Greg. Remember when they were knocked out a few times in the early years of the Ovi and Backstrom and the Mike Green type of Capitals. Then they tried to go all defensive. They had Ovechkin playing as a checking winger, barely getting any playing time. That didn't work. You don't go against, I think, what has gotten you there in the past. And I know these guys are older, but I'm still on the team. Play them till the wheels fall off, and then we'll deal with the fallout after that. There's going to be some dark years here in Pittsburgh. I'm just not prepared to recycle anything just yet.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Talking about dark days in Pittsburgh, just heard RMU's Division I program on the men's and women's side just got cut. So dark days there.
Rough day.
I hope Pitt picks that mantle up and runs with it because there's no reason why Pittsburgh's not a hockey town for NCAA hockey. It's good stuff there. But no, I'm with you. There's no way you blow up this roster. Think about Tampa. They get swept after being setting all those records, being number one, and then they lose out to Columbus. Pick up one or two fringe pieces, add to what your core already has, and roll with that. It just, like I said, it's just, I'm not even mad. I'm not even upset. Just disappointed, just how the things turned out. And the best way to think about this is, every team you have, especially in hockey, being a luck-based sport as it is, bounce here, bounce there, is, what's your lottery tickets percentage chance this year, right? They had a good shot at it this year. You just keep trying to leave that window open as long as possible, and let the chips fall where they may, especially when you got three of the best players in the past 10 years, and you're going to be still in the next 5 years. Those guys are all generational talents for a reason.
And perhaps we should have expected more from Ilya Sorokin coming in. I know I was guilty of looking at the small sample. I think the Penguins bombed him for like 4 goals on 6 shots, and the last time they faced him in the regular season, I thought, oh, here's this guy who dominated the KHL, and he's not as good as advertised. But Barry Trotz went to the youngster, and he went away from the guy they're paying a lot more money in, Semyon Varlamov, or at least a little bit more money. I'm not entirely sure of the disparity in the contracts, but he's the vet. He's the safe choice, Varlamov. And if he's in this series the whole way through, I'm pretty sure we're still playing at least a game 7. So there you go. It is a frustrating sport.
It's this Mitch Korn guy. I'm telling you, Mitch Korn.
Yeah.
You just listen to whatever he says, and everything will be fine.
Well, what about coaching on the Penguins side? Because ever since Mike Bales left as goaltending coach and the reins were handed over to Mike Buckley, Matt Murray regressed big time, or de-evolved, if you will. And you have Tristan Jarry, who doesn't appear to be that franchise goalie, at least not right now. And the Penguins have poured a lot of time and effort into Tristan Jarry, and part of the reason why they felt comfortable letting Fleury go is they thought they had 2 potential starting goalies in Pittsburgh. And it looks like both of those guys definitely had down years. Murray didn't have any support in Ottawa. And Jarry, even if you look at goals saved above or below expected, he was still one of the worst in the league compared to how the Penguins were playing in front of him. So even though his numbers were okay, like raw numbers, raw save percentage was fine, he still didn't steal many goals in games. So there's a lot of talk, I think, that has to be done about goaltending and development for the Penguins. We'll see about Gustafsson still in the Penguins system. They may have to focus on that in the draft coming up. And we all know goalies aren't quick to develop either most of the time. So it's not going to be a quick fix unless you can find something via trade or free agency. All I know is that's the one part of this team that I was a little concerned about coming into the season. I even recorded a short video on it on Pittsburgh Sports Live, that I was nervous about having one combined playoff start between Jarry and DeSmith coming into the year. And unfortunately, it rears its head here. Anything else, Greg, you'd like to touch on before we go? The Islanders, I don't think they even defended that well in this series. They gave up a ton of shots, maybe not a lot of glorious scoring chances, but this wasn't like the low-event Islanders team that we've seen under Barry Trotz the last couple of seasons. I'm not sure I'm bullish on them to beat the Bruins, but they almost run and gunned the Penguins, if you will, in this series.
Yeah, they kind of gave it back to the Pens. Here's what you do best. We'll try to play it as well. And that's a lot of Barry Trotz. He likes to play around with the tactics a lot. And then with the Penguins, you think about Sullivan. He's always tough to play against because he has his systems, but he allows a lot of flexibility in his system for the players to make decisions and make things happen. Trout's a lot more rigid, and he kind of opened it up a little bit. But, yeah, 2 even teams. Sorokin gets hot. Jarry sucks. And, now we're at home. So it's terrible. Yeah, I think there's maybe some I'm a big fan of goaltending coaches. I think that they are the most valuable coach you can hire. Screw the head coach. I don't care. You give me a good goalie coach, we'll work a lot of things in the right direction. So, you think about Ian Clark, all those years. He transformed Bobrovsky, developed the 2 stud goalies that now are in Columbus. Now he's up in Vancouver. Markstrom had a phenomenal year. Boom, he goes, signs a big contract with Calgary. Now you've got that Demko back in. You literally just follow like the top 5, 6 goalie coaches wherever they go, and just suddenly goalies just play well. It's magical. Pay up, go get Ian Clark, go get Francis Allaire. New York Rangers are clearing house anyways. Might as well take their goalie coach from him. He's literally the only guy who didn't get let go from that coaching staff.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
there are reasons why. And it's him and Mitch Corrin are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Ian Clark's probably number 3 there. It's only a matter of time before they're the first non-head coach in the Hall of Fame. I'm pounding the table over here. Give me a goalie coach.
Passionate. Hey, coaches fraternity, got to stand up for each other in that regard. Most important position in the sport, even though it's probably the least predictable. All right, we still have plenty of live viewers right now, so thank you so much for watching. I realize that things are running hot. I'm not going to be going to bed for a while. I'm glad this was a 6:30 face-off, so I can at least get to bed before midnight, get cooled down, maybe have a drink or two, and stew on this one. So who do you like in the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs? I know who I'm rooting for. Some Pens fans may think I'm crazy, but I'm going to root for the Maple Leafs. I want to see them win. I love the way they play. I love Jumbo Joe and Jason Spezza. I like the story about Jack Campbell in net too. Comeback type of guy. And Austin Matthews, we're pinning our hopes on him for USA Hockey for many, many years to come. So I want to see him build some confidence. And I like Toronto as a city. Leafs fans can be obnoxious. They're passionate, though. You got to hand it to them, and I can appreciate that too.
All right, so I got a few teams that I like here. Toronto, I'm a big Kyle Dubas fan. Loved him since he was in the Sioux. My favorite teams usually are ones that I like the management, so call me crazy. Literally a credit card. It's the NHL card. So give me the Leafs. I love the way how they've put a program together off of the ice. They did the full rebuild just like Buffalo did. They're contending for cups. Buffalo's not even close. Edmonton, if they didn't have McDavid, probably the same boat there. So love how they've put the program together. Secondly, I love Vegas. They're the first team I've seen literally like everyone's like, you have to have a good center to go far in the playoffs. They don't want a center. Get rid of Stastny.
Really
get rid of all.
That's a good point.
Yeah, they literally are like, yeah, this is a low skill position. We just need guys to move it up to our talented wingers, Marchessault, Stone, etc. Like William Karlsson, all these great wingers. Yeah, Pacioretty. Like, I want to see that team succeed because they would be proving everyone wrong for so many years. That'd be so fun. I also love the Avs. Bednar, he won the Calder Cup here in Cleveland with the Monsters. So know him a little bit, and great person, good leader. But his style is unbelievably progressive. You just look at, Cale Makar is a cheat code, so don't get me wrong there. But like Devin Taves, you pick him up, Samuel Girard, all these guys on the back end jumping in, rotating position. It's just so difficult to keep up with. Carolina's another fun one. They're the throwback to the old school. Like Rod Brendamore has those guys playing chip and chase hockey. Like, I don't know how they're doing it, but good on them. And they got good quality young talent. Eric Tolsky, their GM, is the reason why the NHL stopped dumping the puck in so much. So it's even more humorous that they dump the puck in more than most. His paper literally, like Parise, I think was the first one. It was like back in 2013. I think it was 2013-14 season when literally the NHL overnight, over an off season, stopped dumping the puck in because he mathematically proved that you could get twice as many shots by carrying the puck in over dumping it in. So seeing them do well is awesome. And just how they've done it off the ice. It's like, hey, we're not going to pay anyone except for our players. Awesome stuff there.
There aren't many teams I would mind seeing advance. I don't want to see the Jets go any further, even though they have some talented guys too. They're fun to watch when they get it going. I'm just ticked that they eliminated the Oilers. I wanted to see more from McDavid and Draisaitl, but not enough support for those two gentlemen, whether it be in net or on the blue line or further down the forward lines too. The Hurricanes are interesting, but I find myself just enraptured by the Lightning. Hope they take care of the Panthers here. That power play that they've had like 5 or 6 tap-in goals in this series. It's incredible to watch with Kucherov. Hopefully, knock on wood, he's still healthy. I forgot how good he was, even just missing one season. I'm not rooting for the Islanders for sure. I like Taylor Hall, so I guess I'll be pulling for Boston in that series. I just want to see Vegas and Colorado play because that's the clash of the Titans we've all been waiting for. And it was good to see Colorado make short work of St. Louis. And, we're hoping that Fleury and the boys get it done here tonight against Minnesota, and we can move on here. It's just been weird the last 3 years. I know we've been spoiled here in Pittsburgh, but I expected more. I expected at least one second-round berth. It's kind of odd. It's been feast and famine here in Pittsburgh. When they go deep, they pretty much win it. At least since that first run to the final. So I don't know. What would you rather have, Greg? Would you have a lot of times when you're knocking on the door, a second round, third round, maybe even final? Or would you prefer like this situation where, well, you're done early or you're riding all the way through the summertime?
I like I want cup or bust. Give me the cup or let my guys rest. I don't want them banged up every single year. I feel like that's what was the wrong with the Pens for a bunch of years, is they kept getting banged up by the playoffs, deep runs, and then it just carries over to the next season and just compounds. It wasn't until they had a few off seasons where they got done early before they made that breakthrough and were able to go back to back. So I'm all about get on the golf course early. If you're going to lose early. Otherwise.
I mean, it's a great point about the wear and tear. Not like you can control it, though. It was always that argument about the Oakland A's in baseball. Would you rather, get close and not win, or rather be the Pirates? I'd rather be the A's. I'd rather have some interesting activity at the end of the season, personally speaking. Folks saying, talk about Jarry. We've talked about Jarry the whole friggin' show. Go back and watch it. He was bad in this series. He was bad in this game. And I think he had one good game, game 2, where he looked somewhat settled, but it was a bad tone right from the start, wasn't it? Game 1, when he gets beaten, I don't want to say the first shot, but the first decent chance goes in against him. I give the Penguins a lot of credit. They battled despite having adversity within their own ranks in that way. And again, just to reiterate for those who are late coming to the show, you can rewind, but I think Greg and I are both saying we liked how they played for the most part. I'm a little bit more down on the defense defending the rushes than Greg was, but outside of that, I think it's hard to come to a different conclusion. I don't think this is one where you split some hairs and really try to nail down the nitty gritty. I think this series analysis is pretty obvious in the end. Yeah,
I do like our one comment. Jarry needs therapy, lots of therapy.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, goaltending at that level is all mental with a few little technical details. So that could be the case. A lot of therapy over the summer.
Marc-Andre Fleury went to a sports psychologist in 2013, and that was actually part of the revamp. That was part of his career renaissance. They brought in Mike Bales as well as his goaltending coach, got him straightened out technique-wise. He went to a sports psychologist, and ever since then, with maybe a couple blips here and there because it's goaltending, right? But Fleury is a great example of a guy who stuck with it and could have easily collapsed a couple of different times, really. He had a bad postseason in 2010. He had a terrible postseason in 2012 and in 2013. The decrepit Tomas Vokoun took the net from him during a playoff run. So that's all you need to know. Go back and watch those highlights, by the way, and remember that Vokoun was just falling over in the net. It was ridiculous. They did the conference final with that guy. So in some ways, I'm just disappointed that the trend continues. Bad goaltending ends up screwing the Penguins over. They got to get this thing figured out, because when it has been figured out, when they've had competent goaltending in the playoffs, they've basically won it all every time.
They really have. And I remember talking about goaltending, we're going way back. Johan Hedberg, Moose, that big playoff run. That was a fun one.
Yeah, there was a time when the Penguins would get good goaltending out of nowhere from guys like that. Previous year, Ron Tugnut. That's one of the first years I watched hockey.
Tuggy, good old Tuggy.
Like, the Penguins just pick up these goalies at the deadline and they play great. This happens every year. No, it doesn't. And it's more difficult than it looked like. Speaking of things that looked easier back then, overtime looked easier back then for the Penguins. They had some real magic in those late Lemieux years. They had some magic in the early Crosby and Malkin years too. And it's a feast or famine thing. When they win the cup, they win in overtime. When they don't, like in this series, 0-2 in OT, more luck, right? More bad luck. I would say more so this time around, just because their goaltender handed away one of those. So theme continues on, and that's about all I got. I'm spent. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, I think we've talked to no end on goaltending today. Get us a goaltending coach. Jarry needs Jesus, and we all need him too.
Saw that too.
Yeah, I'm good. There's disappointment, but blowing it all up is not the case. We need to make some good quality changes in the offseason, and we'll get there.
Yeah. You know what, though? Brian Burke's in charge of this team, so we could all be wrong. Or he's been just strangely sedate here in Pittsburgh. At least
That's
so
the
far.
weirdest thing. I don't know. That's just weird. Him doing nothing. I did not expect that. I thought he'd come in and make some big moves.
Hextall had the ace in the hole. I'm excited about year 2 of Jeff Carter. Went on a positive note there because love what I saw. And for me, that changes a lot. If they don't make that Jeff Carter pickup, maybe I'm thinking, okay, they could try to tear some things down. But hey, one more year of Carter, maybe then after that you rejuvenate and or at least try to in that way. All right, Greg, tell the fine folks where they can find your fine work on the internet.
Awesome. Super easy. It's the Hockey IQ podcast and the Hockey IQ newsletter. Easy Google there. Talking all things Hockey IQ, how the game's played, little details, things to pick up on. If you want, we can talk goaltending, the reverse VH, how post plays changed over the years. So a lot of fun stuff there. And I'm pretty active on Twitter, posting 1 or 2 things a day usually. Maybe little details that most people didn't pick up. At Coach Revak, Revak, right there on the screen in front of you.
Yeah, I saw you put that out there. You're a good marketer, Greg. I like it.
Trying my best. Not my forte. Yeah, I'm a financial advisor in my real world. So this kind of falls to the side sometimes, and take care of business and take care of the people.
You're a financial advisor. The Duquesne coach Conrad is a realtor. Man, you guys. You try to keep it as milquetoast as possible away from the rink, so you save all your energy for the rink, I think.
No, absolutely. You need that flex schedule. Yeah, flexible schedule. That's what you need.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. That's a good point. All right, for Greg Revak, for all you fine folks who watched, we're smiling at the end of this somehow. You got to laugh to keep from crying at times. Penguins lose. It's over. Another season ended in the first round, 3 consecutive years since the Stanley Cup win, or pardon me, since the three-peat attempt. Remember one time they won 9 straight postseason series. That actually did happen, but now they've lost 4 in a row. Time to regroup. Hey, enjoy the summer, right? We're much deeper into it than we would be normally in the first round, so you have that going for you, which is nice. Oh, and the Pirates, too. Never mind. Forget about them. How about the Riverhounds? They just started the season. We'll talk about them on Pittsburgh Postgame later on. Just kidding, Bucco fans. We'll have plenty of Pirates coverage as well. But also more hockey stuff here and also on PittsburghHockeyNow.com with Dan Kingerski and Shelly Anderson. Good night. God bless. We'll talk to you next time on Pittsburgh Postgame.